Shalom, I'm Rabbi Michael Panitz. I'm the Rabbi of Temple Israel of Norfolk, Virginia, speaking to you from the pulpit of our synagogue. At this time, my subject is Mitsrayim, constricted from right and left. In the lives of comfortable people in a land of plenty, Passover is a lot of bustle, but not a time of terror. Finding the appropriate holiday groceries, cleaning the house, preparing gifts for the children who will be attending, it all feels like a Norman Rockwell Thanksgiving table tableau come to life. But that is only the most benign face of Passover. In our long history, Passover has often been the time for the worst anti-Semitic outrages. The Nazis planned to liquidate the Warsaw Ghetto on Passover 1943. This year, the approach of Passover finds dozens of Israelis still held hostage in Gaza, captives of Hamas. Jews worldwide face a marked rise in anti-Semitism, a successful, in quotes, outcome in the eyes of Hamas of the war they provoked in October 2023. This Passover, therefore, is a time of holiday happiness clouded by sadness and foreboding. In such an atmosphere, we can gain fortitude from remembering how heavy was the oppression in the original Egypt, and therefore how inspiring was our rescue. In the Decalogue, God self-introduces with the words, Anochi Adonai asher hotzeticha me'eretz Mitsrayim mibeit avadim. I am the Lord who took you out of the land of Egypt, the house of slaves. Not slavery, but slaves. As the rabbis and classical commentators note, the Egyptians themselves were slaves to Pharaoh, and we were slaves to them. Slaves to slaves. I find an instructive hint about this complex of ideas in the very name of Egypt in Hebrew. The word Mitsrayim, Hebrew for Egypt, Mitsrayim, has the characteristic suffix denoting a pair of objects. Ayim is a dual rather than a standard plural. Two of something, therefore. But two of what? The Hebrew consonants mem, tzadi, and resh refer to a narrow place, a place of constriction. As the psalmist sings, Psalm number 118, verse 5, Min ha-metzar karati Yah. From the straits I called to God. Why is Mitsrayim a place of double constriction? I will offer three speculations, one geographical, one political historical, and one metaphysical. The land of Egypt achieved organization as a political state very early in ancient history, doubtless because of its geography. It is a double strip of arable land, one on either side of the River Nile, surrounded by hundreds of miles of desert. Protected by nature from enemy incursion from almost every direction, the geography of Egypt meant that if some rising power could control the traffic on the Nile, that double strip of arable land, the power could control the country and thus become the big house of the land, or to use the Egyptian word for big house, the pharaoh. Historically, there were at first two states that arose in the region, one in the south, or Upper Egypt, and one in the north, or Lower Egypt. The southern kingdom encompassed the length of the Nile from the cataract at the border of the Sudan north to the beginning of the Nile Delta, whereas the northern kingdom encompassed the Nile Delta, emptying into the Mediterranean. Egyptian dynastic history began with the unification of those two countries approximately 5,000 years ago. For that reason, the traditional headgear of the pharaoh was a double crown, signifying the rulership over the two kingdoms. Mitsrayim, therefore, would mean the two narrow kingdoms, each one a region of green surrounded by larger expanses of arid land. For the Israelites, the experience of being in Egypt brought out a different meaning of the term Mitsrayim. When Egypt fell under the sway of the pharaohs of the 19th dynasty, whose goal was to repel foreign influences and thus make Egypt great again, the fertility of the Israelites made our ancestors loathsome in the eyes of the nativists running the country. They feared that we would side with some invader and then leave the land. Exodus chapter 1, verse 10. The fear contains a self-contradiction. If the nativists didn't want us around, why not just expel us? Why would our departure be a problem? Because they coveted our labor, which they exacted cruelly, reducing us to slavery. And when the slavery did not lower our numbers, the Pharaoh ordered large-scale infanticide. The Bible does not indicate how long that genocidal regime lasted, for we were still a numerous people a generation later, at the time of the Exodus. But the memory of Egyptian oppression became the baseline for all future episodes of murderous Jew hatred. There is a line between Egypt and the slave labor camps of the Nazis, where with vaunted German efficiency, the Nazis calculated how few calories they could supply their Jewish slaves so as to have them expire within a month after exacting that period of labor from them. Today, the dual grammatical form of Mitsrayim calls forth another sobering feature. Jewish people are assailed both from the political right and the political left. On election night 2016, the white nationalist Richard Spencer assembled his followers in a Washington, D.C. convention center and celebrated the election result with a Nazi-style salute and a round of Heil Trump cheers. On January 6, 2021, Robert Keith Packer, one of the desecrators of our nation's capital, wore a T-shirt bearing the message, Camp Auschwitz. And at the inauguration this January, Elon Musk made what, despite feeble denials, cannot fail to assault the consciousness of honest-minded people as a Nazi salute. The anti-Jewish radical right has enjoyed mainstream recognition today more than their neo-Nazi hate-mongers could have dreamt a decade ago. But the danger to the Jewish people does not come from that corner of the political spectrum alone. From progressive circles, criticism of Israel has grown ever more virulent. We now know that as early as October 8th, Hamas-funded organizations on American campuses were spouting terrorist propaganda, hailing the mass murderers, rapists, and kidnappers as resistance fighters, and blaming Israel for defending itself. Alas, Mitsrayim, a place of double constriction, applies all too well this Passover. What are we to do? I have no nostrums to offer, but I do have hope. Let us return to the psalm text I referenced earlier. I quoted then only the first half of the verse. Let us hear the entire verse. Min hametzar karati ya anani b'merchavya. From the straits I called to God. God answered me in divine breadth. The verse is poetic, perhaps a bit opaque, but its general meaning is that when we think we are at a dead end, God so often helps us find a way out. Right and left are both homes for unreasoning hatred directed against us, but we need to persevere, to reach out, to defend ourselves while also cultivating understanding, soliciting allies. We need to transform the world, not to give up on it. Perhaps that is the meaning of Passover for today. Pharaoh and his murderous regime will endure, but not forever. In the words of the Passover song, eventually the Holy Blessed One will banish the angel of death, who slew the slaughterer, who slew the ox, who drank the water, who quenched the fire, which burned the stick, which beat the dog, which bit the cat, which ate the little goat that Daddy bought for 2 bits. That song is a parable of Jewish history. We are still in the episode of the angel of death, but the Holy Blessed One will surely appear. Amen.